Okay, so I want to give you a brief overview of what the Cognitive Control Collaborative at the University of Iowa is, and why, what we're announcing here with this showcase, and the presentation of our group to the world. And I want to start off with a very, very, very brief history of cognitive neuroscience, psychology, and cognitive control research at the University of Iowa. And I want to start off with, three famous names that I'm sure many of you are familiar with from within your textbooks, your introductory psychology textbooks and things like that. People like Levine and Festinger and Bandura have all spent time here on faculty or received their degrees here at the University of Iowa. But it's not only people from within textbooks or that you'll find in textbooks, it's also people that you'll find on the outside of textbooks. So Steve Luck, for example, has written his seminal book on the event-related potential technique while he was on faculty here at the University of Iowa. But when we talk, more specifically about cognitive control research here at the university, well, we'll obviously have to start off with Nancy Andreasen, as the recipient of the National Medal of Science and many, many other awards. Her work on schizophrenia is really seminal in the field in many regards, and in particular, her conceptualization of schizophrenia as a cognitive control related disorder, or as a disorder that has prominent symptomology that reflects hypofrontality or behavioral symptoms related to cognitive control. So Nancy is still here, and she's still doing great work. The other group that we obviously have to mention is the Benton Neuropsychology Lab. That was led for almost 30 years by Antonio Damasio and his wife Hannah Damasio, and has produced just a slew of papers on lesion work in the human brain, in particular with respect to brain lesions. I mean, these two papers are just a selection. Both of these papers have been cited more than 5,000 times, and they basically describe different deficits in what we would today call cognitive control related functions following lesions to the brain. And the Benton lab has also established this great resource of the Iowa lesion patient database, which is still around, which we're still using, and which is, I believe, the largest database of its kind within the United States. So those people obviously deserve to be highlighted. And then finally, what I was completely unaware of when I started here is that Dick Simon actually spent his entire career at the University of Iowa and discovered the Simon effect while he was at the University of Iowa. Now, I read this paper when I was in graduate school, and obviously this didn't quite register with me until much later when I came here and saw his mailbox in the mailroom. So that was interesting for me to say, and maybe you guys didn't know that either. All right, so let's stop our little historical excursion here and jump back to the present. With the present, I want to begin, in 2015, which is when I was hired here, because this whole great past of Iowa cognitive neuroscience and cognitive control and psychology was at that point a little bit in the past, at least when it comes to cognitive neuroscience. In fact, the psychological and brain sciences department had only one cognitive neuroscientist technically in the behavioral and cognitive neuroscience group, and that was Michelle Voss. But they also had an additional person, which is this guy who's on the Zoom call today and is going to be speaking later today. This is Elliot Hazeltine, who many of you obviously know and know of. And when I interviewed here, Elliot and I had great long conversations. It was all very exciting. So I started my lab here then in 2015. And we're basically kind of armed with the promise of the department to really expand the cognitive neuroscience group and at least get the quantity back. We'll see, ask us 10, 15 years down the road about the quality, but quantitatively, we wanted to get to rebuild that group in strength and bring many, many new people in. And so Elliot and I thought, all right, well, let's get some people in that study what we're broadly interested in, which is, cognitive control. So in 2018, we managed to attract Kai here. And then in 2020, last year, Jifang started his lab as well. Now, unfortunately, we are going to have to be stand-ins for our entire labs here because none of us have any up-to-date lab pictures, because that was a little logistically challenging over the last year or so. But what this cognitive control collaborative is basically a sort of super lab or meta lab or what have you, where we combine all of our interests in the different domains of cognitive control that we represent. We get together every 2 weeks. We have a great big meeting, 2 hours, and we talk about new ideas. We talk about seminal papers that may have come out. We discuss data from trainees. We discuss our new grant applications, and it's a great kind of group to kind of bounce your ideas off of and get some feedback on your work. And moreover, and more importantly, we've started very many collaborative projects, some of which are already published and some of which are going to be you're going to be hearing about in this symposium today. But obviously, we're not alone in the world. We're embedded in this whole wider ecosystem of cognitive control, cognitive neuroscience, and psychology research opportunities at the University of Iowa. And that starts with our expanded, now re-expanded cognitive neuroscience group. So we hired 3 additional people that don't specifically focus on cognitive control, but they all deal with topics that are related to it. So Eche is a language researcher, Dorit is a brain connectivity researcher, Bengi deals with sleep. So our cognitive neuroscience group, of which we're all a part, has grown in quantity and is now back up to full strength. We also have our great colleagues in the cognitive psychology group, or in the human perception and performance group, who are renowned researchers that deal with attention, working memory, visual search, and those kinds of topics, and have great expertise when it comes to experimental psychology, and they're great collaborators. Like I said, the Benton Neuropsychology Lab is still around, and we all collaborate with Dan Trinell, who's administering the Iowa lesion patient database these days. We also managed to hire Aaron Bose, who actually did an undergrad here at the University of Iowa before going off to Harvard and other places, and then coming back and also working with the lesion patients quite extensively. So we all collaborate with him. And then finally, the group that attracted me most, in addition to obviously Elliot, in coming here to the university when I did, is the neurosurgery group, in particular, Drs. Greenlee and Howard, who are not only phenomenal neurosurgeons, but they're also incredible neuroscientists in their own right, and they're great to collaborate with. I actually remember when I was at UC San Diego, which is obviously a phenomenal place to do cognitive neuroscience research. I had to fly to Texas to work with ECOG patients, had to fly to Toronto to work with DBS patients. And we have all of this, not just on site, but their lab space is actually in the same hallway as ours. So it's a great opportunity for collaboration. And you'll see some intracranial neurosurgical data from that collaboration in this symposium later on today as well. And this is obviously just a selection of the people and the human resources that we have here at the university to collaborate with. We're embedded in a much larger infrastructure environment that contains the wider Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences. We just got this brand new building. We have 30 full-time faculty that focus on different aspects of psychological and brain sciences. We have the Department of Neurology, of which I'm a faculty member. We have the Department of Psychiatry, of which Kai is a faculty member. And we also have the Iowa Neuroscience Institute, which has been founded 3 or 4 years ago with a $50+ million gift from the Roy Carver Foundation. It's led by Ted Abel, and it houses more than 140 full-time faculty that focus on different aspects of neuroscience. We're all members of the Institute. The Institute also contains our imaging facility. We have 3T and 7T research dedicated scanners that are led by Vince. So we all work with him as well. So finally, let me give you a quick idea of proximity and where we are. So this is a aerial shot of Iowa City, Iowa. It's divided into 2 halves by the Iowa River. You have the liberal arts campus on the east side and the medical campus on the west side. So the new psychological and brain sciences building, which contains all of our lab spaces as well as our collaborative space, is here on the east side. The west side contains the Iowa Neuroscience Institute. Right next to it and connected to it is the Medical Research Center, where we have additional lab space and where the neurosurgeons have their research space. And then the UI hospital, again, is connected right to it and contains the departments of neurology and psychiatry. And just to give you an idea of the scale, it's about a 3/4 mile walk, or a little bit more than a kilometer if you're joining us from Europe, to get from one side to the other. So it takes about 10 minutes of walking across the beautiful Iowa River to get to wherever you want to be in terms of our collaborative opportunities. As long as we're looking at maps, let's look at one more map. This is obviously one of the United States. Why am I showing you this? Well, it's because shortly after we started this collaborative, we all kind of realized that our our last stop before coming to Iowa City was out in California. So Elliot did a PhD at Berkeley and then did a postdoc at Stanford. Kai did his postdoc at Berkeley. Jafong did his postdoc at Stanford, and I did my postdoc at UC San Diego. And somehow, some way, we all ended up here, kind of in the middle of the map, where it doesn't even say anything. It doesn't even say Iowa City right here. And obviously, this being a Zoom showcase, we would have much preferred to, invite people out here in person, show you what Iowa City is about, and really put it on the map for you. But for now, you're going to have to make do with a couple of picture impressions that I have here. So this is our new building for the Psychology and Brain Sciences department. It's located right downtown, Iowa City, obviously being a college town. If you're staying at the office late on Friday or Saturday, you may want to bring some headphones. We have great entertainment opportunities in Iowa City, outdoor theater, outdoor entertainment. This is the walk from the medical campus back to the liberal arts campus. We're going across the bridge. On the medical campus, you also have the football stadium that houses the home games for our Iowa Hawkeyes football team. And actually, if you're running a patient over at the hospital and you're tricky enough, you can get up to the observation deck and watch some free football. Football isn't your thing. You can also enjoy some of the world-class cultural arts and entertainment that we have here in Iowa, including the Hansher Auditorium, which regularly houses, orchestras and opera and musicals from around the world. Iowa City is also housed home to a lot of microbreweries and a culinary scene that is nothing to shake your head at. And the big thing about Iowa City that people always laud, at least when you come here, is that I think 99.5% of people that live within Iowa City live within a mile of a park or a green space. So this is actually a slow and steady 10-minute bike ride from my office. These are actually my toes. They're in the water here out at Terry Trueblood Lake, which is very close to the Psych and Brain Sciences building. If you want to get into a car, you can drive 20 minutes and you can get here, which is the Lake McBride Nature and Recreation Area. It has campsites. What I like to do in the winter is I like to go out there with my dog and snowshoe over lunch break. It's a great place. Anyway, if you want to know more about our initiative here and our Cognitive Control Collaborative, you can find us on Twitter at Iowa Control, or you can go to our website, cognitivecontrol.net. All right, so these are my opening remarks. So I'm now going to lead over to briefly walk you through the program that most of you have probably already seen. So my opening remarks are done. We're going to jump right into our first symposium on cortico-subcortical dynamics of cognitive control, which will be anchored by Berta Forstmann, who we're going to hear from soon. We're going to have a symposium that's going to take about 2.5 hours, and there's going to be a roundtable that is for Iowa students only. So you can hang out in this Zoom channel here and mute yourself and turn off your camera. It's going to happen on a different Zoom. And then we're going to reconvene at 1:30 after lunch break to hear a keynote address from David Brown, followed by our second symposium, which is going to deal with sequential and contextual effects of adaptive control, and is going to be anchored by Julie Bugg's talk from Washington University in St. Louis. And then we're going to wrap it all up with a roundtable. Before we jump into the program, I want to briefly acknowledge the help of Darcy Diesberg, who's a graduate student in my lab, who's also going to be speaking as part of the first symposium, and who's really done a lot of work in helping me organize this symposium for today. Okay, so I'm going to